Fear is humanity's oldest emotion. And this is its home. Welcome to Terror Tales. Today's story is Childhood Shadows, the Terror of That Eerie Dusk, submitted by a member of our community. The memories of my childhood are like a reel of faded film, many scenes have blurred, but that leaden-blue dusk was carved deep into my mind with a graver, every detail etched with terrifying clarity. It must have been early summer. The air still held the day's residual warmth rising from the sun-baked earth, mixed with the raw scent of soil and plant sap. I was probably 7 or 8. After dinner, while my mother was clearing the dishes, I slipped out of the house like a little fish escaping a net. The daytime bustle of the village had settled into an eerie silence, the cooking smoke dispersed, leaving a strange stillness hanging in the air. I stepped onto the main road leading out of the village. It was an asphalt road, usually busy with traffic and dust. But at that moment, it lay like a dead gray serpent, rigid under the vast twilight, utterly empty. As far as I could see, there wasn't a single person, not a trace of engine noise. This absolute silence had a weight of its own, pressing down heavily on my small heart. The world seemed to have been muted, leaving only the sound of my own hurried footsteps and my increasingly loud heartbeat. On both sides of the road stretched endless rice paddies. The green rice shoots were growing vigorously, but in the fading light, the green looked deep and thick, almost black. When the wind passed, the rice swayed, a scene that should have been full of life, yet in that profound silence, it felt like a silently undulating, dark green sea hiding unknown things. I walked alone, aimlessly, along the road. The initial novelty quickly wore off, replaced by a nameless fear that crept up from the bottom of my heart like a vine, tangling around my steps. The farther I got from the village lights and voices, the sharper the fear became. I couldn't help but look around, feeling as if countless eyes were watching me, the only living thing, from within the vast quiet. That's when my gaze was drawn deep into the paddies. Not far from the road was a thick patch of reeds, taller than a person, their stalks rubbing against each other in the evening breeze with a faint rustling sound. The edge of this reed patch formed a deep, almost right-angled corner with a field ridge. My eyes, as if pulled by an invisible force, locked onto that corner. There was a grave. It was a typical earthen mound, not high, not large. The soil looked neither new nor old, with few weeds, but it definitely wasn't freshly dug, carrying a dust yellow hue smoothed by time. A stone tablet stood in front of the mound. The light was too dim to make out the specific characters carved on it, but I vaguely sensed they were painted in red. That red stood out in the gray-blue twilight like a streak of congealed blood. But what made my blood almost instantly freeze solid wasn't the lonely grave itself. It was the skeleton kneeling squarely in front of the tombstone. A complete, deathly white human skeleton, holding a kneeling posture, utterly motionless, facing the tablet. Its spine was slightly curved, its skull bowed low, as if engaged in a silent, eternal act of penitence or worship. Every rib, every finger bone, was clearly visible, forming a complete, horrifying shape. My breath caught in my throat, all the hair on my body stood on end. My mind went blank, filled only with a roaring, immense terror. Did it see me? I didn't know. It seemed completely absorbed in its own world, or perhaps it was simply part of that corner. I stared fixedly, doubting my eyes, wondering if the twilight was playing tricks on me. I blinked hard, even pinched my thigh secretly. The sharp pain confirmed I was awake, and the white kneeling figure remained. Minutes passed without any change. Fear finally shattered my paralysis. I let out a short, sharp cry, turned, and ran for home as if my life depended on it. The wind whistled past my ears. I felt like the skeleton might stand up at any moment, its hollow sockets fixed on my retreating back. I didn't dare look back, running with all my strength until I saw the dim yellow light of my doorway, until I crashed into the house and threw myself into my mother's arms, babbling incoherently about the horror I'd just witnessed. My mother patted my back, soothing me, saying firmly, "You must have seen wrong. It was so dark. You probably mistook a scarecrow or something else. Don't scare yourself, child." But I was absolutely certain it wasn't a scarecrow. How could a scarecrow have such a precise, kneeling posture? How could it have such a complete bone structure? In the years that followed, I saw educational human skeletons in school and hospitals. The hospital models were too stark white, bleached, emitting an industrial coldness. The one I saw that evening was white, but not that glaring white. It was more like bone stained by time, with a grayish quality, blending eerily with the gathering dusk. Stranger still, in my memory, certain bone joints or edges seemed faintly tinged with a very subtle, almost imperceptible, creamy yellow, not overall, but seeping from within the bone itself, giving it a bizarrely smooth appearance, unlike the dry sharpness of a model. A couple of days after this incident, I deliberately dragged my mother past that spot again. It was daytime, sunny, with people on the road. Summoning my courage, I looked. The reed patch was still there, the right-angled corner remained, the earthen grave still stood alone, but the space before the tablet was empty, nothing but weeds. The reeds had grown taller, almost obscuring half the grave. My mother said, "See? There's nothing there." But her words couldn't dispel the doubt in my heart. For several nights after, I couldn't sleep properly. Closing my eyes brought back the image of the white skeleton kneeling before the grave under the gray-blue sky. Even though my mother insisted it was fake, deep down, I stubbornly believed what I had seen was real. It was during this period of sustained fear that something even more bizarre happened. One night, I woke up for no reason. I'd been sleeping deeply, without any warning. Upon waking, it was pitch black, utterly silent. Instinctively, I wanted to call out for my mom. But as I opened my eyes wide, trying to adjust to the darkness, I was horrified to find, right in front of my bed, at an extremely close range, a pair of eyes hovering. They weren't human eyes. They had no pupils, no blood vessels in the whites. They were just pure eye shapes, glowing with an incandescent, light bulb-like radiance. The light was bright, a stark white, yet strangely, it didn't illuminate anything around it. My room remained plunged in darkness, only those two eyes hung there like two isolated, coldly burning symbols. The eyes were quite large, and the distance between them was unusually wide, roughly estimated to be about 1.5 head widths apart. They just hung there, silently looking at me. I was terrified out of my wits, immediately squeezed my eyes shut, my body rigid, holding my breath. I trembled under the covers, my only thought being, if it dares to touch me, I'll scream for Mom and Dad. I held still like that for what felt like an eternity, until fear and exhaustion strangely intertwined, and I somehow drifted back into a fitful sleep. That night, it made no move. Later, I didn't dare tell my parents the details of this event. Time passed, the shadows of childhood gradually faded amidst the routines of school and life, but that memory always remained, veiled in gray. Just as I was about to forget these events, another experience brought back that chill. It was also dusk. I was playing hide and seek with a group of kids in the village. Almost everyone had been found, except for one last girl. As we searched, suddenly, at the corner of an old house, we saw half a head peeking out. The head was extremely black, not dark-skinned, but a pure, light-absorbing jet black, completely lacking any facial features. Thinking it was her, we all started shouting, "We see you! Come out!" The black head didn't move, just stayed there, silently watching us. The atmosphere grew strange. The bravest boy among us said, "I'll go get her." He walked towards the corner. Just as he was about to get close enough to reach out and touch it, the black head snapped back behind the wall at an impossibly fast speed, quick as a shadow. We were still cheering, "We saw you! Stop hiding!" Just then, the boy reached the corner. He peered around and his face showed confusion. "No one's here. There's nothing." As he spoke, the last girl, the one we were looking for, emerged from a small alley in a completely different direction behind us, looking slightly annoyed at being found, but her breathing was calm, not at all like she'd just been running. We accused her of cheating, insisting she'd just been peeking from the corner. She looked blank and wronged. "I wasn't. I was hiding behind that woodpile the whole time. I came out because I heard you yelling you found me." We described the black head we'd seen, sure it was her. But her face paled slightly, and she said in a small voice, "What you saw, was it something completely black?" I've seen something like that before, but not a head. It was a foot, completely black, just standing behind a door." Her words felt like a block of ice shoved into our chests. A chill ran up from the soles of our feet. We looked at each other, no longer in the mood for games, and scattered, each running home in a panic. Later, the village had intermittent, similar, unexplainable rumors, but I was no longer willing to delve into or listen to them. Years passed. I grew up, moved to the city, lived a busy life, received over a decade of scientific education. Last year, I went home for the new year. It was a similar, dusk, the village just as quiet. Whether out of nostalgia for childhood or some deep-seated urge to verify something, I found myself once again walking down that road leading out of the village. Grown up, I thought my courage should have grown too. I wanted to retrace the route, even faintly hoping to encounter something again, perhaps this time to see through the childhood illusion with an adult's rationality. The scenery was vaguely familiar, just the road older, the paddy's dry ridges in winter. I walked towards the remembered reed patch. The closer I got, the thicker the twilight, my heart beating uncontrollably faster. When I was still some distance away, before I could clearly make out that right-angled corner, a sound suddenly pierced the silence. A crying sound. A drawn-out, mournful, pitiful wail, clearly coming from deep within those withered yellow reeds. It didn't sound like a child's, nor entirely like an adult's. It held an indescribable sorrow and eeriness, drifting across the empty fields. All the courage I'd built up over the years crumbled to dust in that instant. A chill shot straight up my spine to the top of my head. All thoughts of investigation, all rationality, vanished. I turned around without hesitation, walking quickly back, almost breaking into a jog, then nearly a run. Back in the village, I met neighbors chatting. Still shaken, I couldn't help but mention, I was just over by the field ridge, and I heard crying coming from the reeds. "Has anyone passed away recently?" I asked around. Everyone shook their heads, saying the village had been very peaceful lately, no one had died. I could only vaguely warn them to be careful going over there. Some listened and laughed, saying I must have heard wrong. Others frowned, muttering under their breath, "Bad luck. For that, to show up now." At home that evening, I told my mother about my Dusk adventure, trying to sound casual. After listening, she came out with the same line she'd used for decades, in that same tone of absolute certainty, "Nonsense. You must have seen wrong, heard wrong again. Scaring yourself." Looking at my mother's resolute face, I finally understood. Some experiences are destined to remain sealed in one's own memory, impossible to share with others, especially those closest to you. They are the unverifiable, dark pages of my personal history. These things truly happened to me, they are not fabrications. Believe it or not, I ask you to just listen. Perhaps, in everyone's hometown, there lurk similar corners not easily explained by science, and memories from under the twilight, best left unmentioned. Thank you for being with me tonight. I invite you to join me next time, as we venture deeper into the world of the unknown.